Visit gpfcircle.com to purchase the complete audio package from Rising and Falling Powers, the Geopolitical Futures Conference held in New York City. Again, visit gpfcircle.com to purchase the complete audio package. You've been doing a lot of research into ancient Rome and how some of the things that happened back then, we can take those lessons learned and apply them to what's happening in the world today. Why don't you unpack that idea for me?
It's fascinating because geopolitics applies to all ages, right? And if you look at the rise of Rome, the Roman Republic specifically, so before they became this big empire with Julius Caesar and Augustus Caesar, first they had to take over the Italian peninsula. Once they had done that, by about the middle of the 3rd century BC, they ran into this problem. There was another power on the Mediterranean. It was this power called Carthage. They got into a series of these really massive wars over the course of 120 years, and ultimately Rome won. But in between that conflict beginning and Rome beating Carthage, there's this guy named Hannibal who crossed the Alps. You've probably seen all those photos with elephants and all that. And he just destroyed the Romans at these massive battles. I've been reading a lot about the Battle of Cannae, where he completely enveloped an 87,000 soldier Roman army with almost half the size force. And you ask, how is that possible? But Rome still won. So why is that? Rome had a number of resources, geopolitical resources, that Carthage didn't have. Manpower reserves that it can draw on. It was in Italy. It had supply lines, obviously, that Hannibal couldn't draw on. And it had a system of allies that it had developed that was more militarily based than Carthage's, which are economically based. So all this happened. This guy named Scipio Africanus at the end finally rose up at the end of the Second War to challenge Carthage and take them over. And it was this cult of personality that built up around Scipio Africanus that sort of led to the Julius Caesars, which led to the fall of Rome. So when people talk about, well, fall of the Roman Republic, not the empire. So when people talk about America today is Rome, there are similarities, but there are differences. And there is no cult of personality around generals today in America.
There's no cult of personality with generals in America today. However, there is an immense amount of respect for the institution of the military, more so than any other governmental institution in the United States. How does that play into what you've discovered about ancient Rome?
I think you defined the distinction, which is loyalty to the institution. People are not loyal to a general in the way that Romans became loyal to Julius Caesar. And that was really what caused this, the divergence of loyalty in the end of the Roman Republic is one of the big things that led to its end. It's why Julius Caesar was able to take his army, cross the Rubicon, and march on Rome, because his army was no longer loyal to the institutions of the Roman Republic. They were loyal to him individually because he took care of them, and Rome didn't necessarily.
Okay, some people would say that with a figure like Donald Trump, that he's trying to maybe become more of that person, that you're loyal to him as opposed to the state. Is that an apt metaphor?
He might be trying that. I think the question is, if there's a new president in 3 years or 7 years from now, and I'm trying to make the comparison specifically to Rome right now, will the military remain loyal to Trump after he's out of office? And I find that hard to believe.
Do you feel that a lot of the, let's say, comparisons to Rome vis-a-vis the fall of Rome and the potential fall of America, are they overblown? Are we, anywhere near where Rome was when they were collapsing? We still have a long way to go. Some people look at the US and feel like morally it's declining, financially it has a lot of problems, huge amount of debt, issues with overextension of the empire, these kinds of things, and they instantly relate it to Rome. But where are we in that continuum?
There are some similarities. For example, the Roman Empire, one of the reasons, or one of the classic reasons that it struggled, and I'm talking about the empire now, not the republic, is it did become overstretched, and it no longer made economic sense for them to retain the outer periphery of their empire, so they started pulling back, and you can get into the details. But even that distinction, the fall of the Roman Empire and the fall of the Roman Republic, separated by about 500 years, is one that's not often made. And I don't think we are anywhere close to the fall of the American Empire in the way that the Roman Empire fell. If anything, America right now is closer to Rome after the end of the 3 Punic Wars. And after the end of the 3 Punic Wars, Rome beat Carthage, and no longer was it just the master of the Italian peninsula, it was the hegemon of the Mediterranean. And 25 years ago, when the Soviet Union fell, that was the very beginning of America's period of global hegemony. So while people might say the last couple of years have been really rough and indicating that's the beginning of some sort of decline, really this is just the beginning of what's going to be a very long period of American dominance. Not preponderance, or not omnipotence. America doesn't have, it can't control everything in the world, and it's been learning that in the last decade or so, but preponderance of power, certainly.
Interesting, okay. So you obviously know there's been a lot of coverage on this one issue, and that's that there's a political stagnation happening in the United States where the two parties are so polarized on opposite sides, they're not even talking to each other and nothing's getting done. And it's constipating the form of government. I know Barack Obama's talked about it extensively. There was a documentary that Vice did just recently, 2 or 3 months ago, called The House Divided, that was a stunning look at what's happened over the last 20 years this way politically. Taking a look at that and relating that back to what we started talking about and what happened with Julius Caesar, are there some comparisons that can be made there?
I think there are. I think there are some comparisons, again, not to the fall of the Roman Empire, but the beginning of the fall of the Republic. So about 70 or 80 years before Julius Caesar, you had this guy named Tiberius Gracchus. And what had happened, Tiberius Gracchus was sort of the ancient version of what some people today would call populace. During the 3rd Punic War, a lot of people were off fighting, a lot of farmers, right? It was an agricultural society. And these rich aristocrats would then buy up people's lands as it went bankrupt. And so as soldiers came back from the war, they were reasonably not particularly enthusiastic about the situation. So this guy Tiberius Gracchus was sort of like the people's guy, and he said, you know what? It's not fair. It's not fair that all of these aristocrats have bought up all your failed land while you were off doing your duty and doing what you deserve to get your fair share in society. And that was really when the distinction between the populares and the aristocrats was formed, and that was the faction that brought down the Republic in the Civil Wars. So I think you see some similarities in terms of the nature of the division, but again, you can't just look at the similarities, you have to look at the differences. Again, we don't have the loyalty to individual generals today. In the Roman Republic, institutions were not formalized. Almost everything was built up over sort of like an accumulation of tradition. Obviously, they are formalized in today, and they're formalized in part because our founders recognized that that was one of the weaknesses. At the end of the Republic, people could start challenging these traditions and say, well, we've never done it this way. Well, we can do it now, can't we? There's no law saying we can't. So there is division. However, there's been division in American history before, and you generally see extreme division before you see some sort of radical shift in policy.
Interesting discussion. We could do this all night. Thank you so much for your time.
Absolutely.
Visit gpfcircle.com to purchase the complete audio package from Rising and Falling Powers, the Geopolitical Futures Conference held in New York City. Again, visit gpfcircle.com to purchase the complete audio package.